All right, so my first question is, what was your favorite game to design and why?
I'm going to stick with EverQuest. Reason being that it's pretty much the grandfather of all MMOs. I mean, you can say Ultima Online started it all, but EverQuest is what launched it into where it is now. So you've got to give mad props for what it is.
Have you ever had somebody at a convention or something similar yell at you for something they didn't like in a game?
All the time. EverQuest, Gears of War, Halo, and I'm like, I didn't even work on those games and you're yelling at me about it? But yeah, I hear it all the time. It's nothing unheard of.
One of my personal favorite games is Star Wars Galaxies. What was your favorite part about designing that game?
I think the fact that it was Star Wars. I mean, let's be honest. It was a wide open world. You could actually choose your class. You actually had a lot of things you could do. You know, you could check out all the things we all enjoyed from the movies. So yeah, I mean, it's Star Wars. What else can I say?
I think something that everybody's going to ask and probably has asked you is about breaking into the industry. So what would be your basic tips and hints and things like that you'd like to give out?
I think you should have a focus. Whether it's you want to be a game designer, you want to be a storyboarder, you want to be a 3D modeler, I mean, have a specific discipline. I don't care if it's IT, janitor, game tester, and stick to it because you have to really have a focus because if you don't, getting in, you're not going to know what to do when you get there. But, I mean, the door is always there. It's going to be a little harder because they want the best of the best, and that's understandable. It's a game industry. Don't go on the impression that you're going to make lots of money because that's not what it's about. It's about the passion of the game. It's not about the content and the money you get from it.
So do you have any hobbies? Other than playing games, designing games?
Of course.
What are some of your favorite things to do?
Skateboarding, lacrosse, BMXing, I'd say spending time with kids, drawing, gaming obviously has got to be in there somewhere, but yeah, that's pretty much about it hobby-wise.
Once you've designed a game, do you find that you can still play it and have fun, or do you kind of get tired of it after a while?
It can become mundane because you're just like, EverQuest, I want to move on and play something else. But there's moments where you're like, yep, I remember that, I helped create that, that's awesome. But then you're just like, I'm really itching to play some Borderlands.
So who's your idol?
Well, I'd say it comes down to the big three. It comes down to Brad McQuaid, obviously. I mean, the guy is the founder of my industry. Ed Fries, and John Carmack.
Do you find when you're playing other people's games that you end up breaking down parts of it and seeing like the behind the scenes in your mind as you're playing it? Like, I would have done that different and things like that.
You become analytical when you actually work on something and then you play someone else's game, because I found myself doing that with Borderlands 1. It's like, well, wait a minute. If this script would have been written this way, I wouldn't have to deal with Clamptrap right now. I could have just thrown him to the side and ignored him the whole game. But then you realize, though, well, that's part of the game, though. They made the mechanics that way for a reason. So, I mean, every designer is always going to sit there and nitpick games. I mean, I know I did that with Blood Rain, the first game. I was like, this is like the same level, just redone like 3 times. But, after a while, you're like, I appreciate it because it's different. It's, it's not something you see every day. So, yeah, you could be very analytical about it.
Do you have a favorite game? I know that's a really tough question.
It's a loaded gun!
I know. Maybe just pick a top 3 or...
I'll go by genre, how's that?
Okay.
First-person shooter, hands down, Borderlands 2. I'm just going to say it. Gearbox, amazing game. I could say Half-Life all day, because it's still another one of my favorite franchises, BioShock, but Borderlands, I have it on PS3, I have it on Xbox 360, I have it on the PC. I'm addicted. I've never been this addicted since EverQuest. So yes, it's my favorite game, first-person shooter, hands down. Racing, Gran Turismo, still my favorite. It's just the concept of how much they put into the effort to design the game. It's incredible. For platformer, what can I say, Mario? Mario will always be my favorite because he's started everything for us. He just gave us the door. We just walked in. Beyond that, there's other genres, but MMOs I'm not going to talk about, and other things. So we'll just leave alone.
Out of all the big names like Halo or Gears of War or any of the big stuff, what project would you like to work on the most?
Borderlands 3. Hands down, if it's coming out, I'd like to be a part of that team. I'd actually put my resume in for that one.
How do you think social media has affected the gaming world?
Well, I think Patrick Scott said it best, that it's a huge influence in the way we perceive stuff, because now it's become an outlet beyond just a console or PC. It's something that it's broad now. I mean, before, gamers were kind of like, oh, you play games, you're one of those closet kids, Now it's just acceptable. Everyone's accepting it for what it is. We all enjoy games, we all play it, and it's a happy medium now. So now social media has made it so much more popular, because back in the day, I'd be honest, Angry Birds would have not succeeded if it wasn't because of the social media we have today, because a game like that would have failed back in the 90s. It just wouldn't have got any press. But the thing is, it also has had the negative effect, too, because now people are, more critical than they used to be. Well, it's like, I didn't like the content that was at the end of Mass Effect 3. I think that the way they did it was just this, and we saw the outcome from that. It was a very tragic situation. So it goes both ways.
So, without making any enemies, which company of the ones you've worked with and heard about is the easiest to work with and gives you the most freedom versus that stringent, this is what we want, make it this way?
Well, from the studios that I worked with, between Sony and the other projects I worked on with SEEA, EA, Big Idea, ironically, out of them, it was not a game studio. It was an animation studio. Big Idea gave me so much flexibility on basically working on their VeggieTales game that they said, okay, give us what you're trying to accomplish, we'll take a peek at it, and we'll give you front run on it. And I'm like, really? I mean, even though it's your IP, you're going to actually give me the right to run with this? That's awesome. Versus with Sony, I had to go through all the red tape, and just too much red tape for me.
Do you have a preference in a specific system? Do you like PC more? Do you like Xbox? What are your feelings on...
Another loaded gun question. As a Sony guy, I could say day in and day out that I love Sony products, but you know what? I got a 360 at home. I got an original Xbox. I got a PC. I got a Dreamcast. I got a Wii. I love all the systems because I'm a gamer, and that's the way it should be. We should not isolate ourselves based on a fanboy perception, but enjoy what the systems offer, because each system is different. I mean, if you think about it, when the backwards compatible PS3 was out, it didn't get much traction. Ironically, though, you could play your PS2 or PS2 games, PS1 games, and it was a great system. But everyone was hopped on the bandwagon for Xbox. It's like, well, Halo's the only reason I'm getting this system. Well, why? Both systems have advantages that the other ones are not going to have, so why not get both? I mean, you're not going to get Twisted Metal on the 360. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen.
Anything? That was going to be my next question. Just more. Give me a second. You can go with another one.
Yeah, sure. What do you have coming up in the future? Can you give us any clues, hints?
I've actually applied back in the industry. I'm actually talking with Wolf Studios here in Denver, since the guy who actually is behind the studio is former SOE. And I've also talked with Gearbox and Dinosaur Games down in Austin. So yeah, I'm interested in getting back in the industry because IT and aerospace is I'm kind of done with it. I mean, I've done 15 years in IT. I want to get back into gaming. I'm kind of itching to start a new project. So,
do you find yourself getting mad at movies that portray the gaming industry?
Well, I think I'm more mad when we take a fundamental idea of a game. Let's just say Mario Brothers. Let's use that as a good example. To me, Mario can never have been made a movie anyway. There's just no way. It's not feasible in any sense. So to have a movie based on the video game was more insulting to the industry than it was useful. Now, there's exceptions to that rule. Don't get me wrong. Mortal Kombat, the first one, was actually decent for its time. Keyword, time. For its time, it was decent. By today's standards, it's very bad, per se. But you gotta have a yin for yang. You can't just take something that is beloved in an industry and just totally trash it for the idea of trashing it, because that's what Blood Rain was, obviously. That movie was terrible. But the game actually got better with the second one. So, I mean, I think that if Hollywood's interested in moving games to movies, they should hear the input from the...
Do you have a favorite gaming movie?
Period.
Do you have a favorite gaming movie? Besides Grandma's Boy?
I'm going to stick with Grandma's Boy because Jesse Sosa actually worked on the game inside that, which is that Xbox One, as we know. And it really was an accurate portrayal of the industry, not from the standpoint of the way they perceive certain people in that movie, because obviously I've never met a CEO at any game studio that acted the way that he did. Never. I've never met anyone like that. But the programmer, oh yes, programmers in the game industry are a very unique breed of human. There's a lot of examples.
So they're very similar to JT.
They are. They are rock stars in their own world.
Sorry. Recorder ran out of batteries, apparently.
It's terrible. No one likes that.
Right in the middle of an interview.
What was your inspiration? Was it just, gaming from a child, or was there anything in particular that inspired you to be a game designer?
I think my biggest inspiration, ironically, is when I was a kid. I was one of Activision's leading badasses for that generation. I mean, I had a River Raid badge, I had an Enduro badge. I mean, I got the plaques to back that up, and they were so impressed with my gaming skills. They're just like, they sent out this letter saying, hey, you're in the top 25 of players in the US. And I'm like thinking to myself, there's maybe more in this industry than just playing games. Maybe there's something beyond that. And the first exposure I got to it was like 30th Studio Max version 2. And I started dabbling with it, and from that point, I got really interested in it. And when I heard Sony was hiring when I was in San Diego, I was like, I'm going to apply. I've just got to give it a chance, because you know what? It would be so cool just to say I'd worked there. Yeah, it happened. So I can't say too many bad things about that, so.
What's your educational background that's really helped you?
Ironically, I'm all self-taught. Everything I've done from IT all the way to game design has been self-taught. So, I mean, it would have been nice to have the degree, but it just didn't happen.
Okay. Battery screwed me up. I know this is a bit loaded, but old school or new school? And if you could expound which, because I know you got reasons for both. But.
I don't think of it as a loaded question. I think of it more of a realistic, honest question. I'm going to go with old school over new school for a reason. Okay, old school, the industry had an appreciation more for its gamers as a whole, because I mean, think about it, they gave you badges with plaques, and it was signed by the CEO of Activision. I mean, come on, when you get that today, oh heck no. They have these things called trophies and achievements, and it's just a generic way of saying, oh look, I've done this in a video game, and everyone gets it. It's nothing special. And it seemed like with older systems, less failures too. I've never seen an NES just die for no apparent reason. I've seen a 360 Red Ring. I've seen a PlayStation Wile. I mean, I've even seen the new systems have problems. But the older stuff, it just works. I still have an Atari that works. I mean, that says a lot for the older hardware. I hate to say it that way, but it does.
Got an SNES with a hole in the side to hit the switch because the little lever is completely broken off and it still runs.
Well, screwdrivers work too. Just pop it in there and jam it down.
Now, what's your favorite Atari game? Do you have a favorite?
It's definitely not E.T. I'd probably say Yar's Revenge is my favorite. Hands down. It would have to be Yar's. And I'm sure it has a lot to do with the designer behind it, because, I mean, he influenced many, many generations of gamers. So,
what part of the process do you like and hate?
Launch days are the worst. I don't care what studio you work for. Launch days is like basically head, table, combination grade. Because it's guaranteed 10 hours plus, easily, and you may not get the food you're wanting. And you have to wait until everything's perfect before you can head home like that night. The best part of, I'd say, in general, of the working in the industry, the perks. I mean, obviously, free games, movies, jackets. I mean, just going to Dave & Buster's for the night and having it just all to yourself for a studio, that's awesome.
That is cool.
I got more if you want. From the gamer side, kind of feels like studios push games out a lot of times before they're ready, relying off of the updates that are available to fix problems. Would you say from your side it feels that way, or?
I think we saw that at Sony with Star Wars Galaxies, and that's kind of apparent. I mean, Wookiee getting caught in an elevator, that's just basic math, people. I mean, it's not too complicated. But, I mean, I think the reason why there's rushes is because when you have a primary studio and the third-party studio, there's deadlines set by somebody. Whether it's LucasArts, which is now disbanded, but, I mean, there's always someone saying, hey, we need to get this out at a certain time. And if it's got some bugs, launch it and we'll patch it later. The problem is the gamer sees it from, well, geez, this game's so buggy that every time I play it, I either have the sound card crash, I have my console lock up, or even worse, it causes a red ring. So as a gamer, it's more frustrating, I think. From a designer standpoint, yeah, it's frustrating, but really, do we have the final say if that launches? No, we don't.
Is there a game in particular that, I don't know, you would like to redesign or recreate?
I would have to say there's one that always comes to mind because it was never a finished product, and I have a high respect for American McGee. I love his work, but when he did that Wizard of Oz thing for Atari, it was never finished. And I would like to see that finished because, it was a brilliant concept. It reminded me a lot of the original Alice, and I think it has serious potential even in today's market. Just have to be revamped, obviously, but I think it has serious potential.
Can you comment about DLC?
Downloadable content. I think it hurts the industry more than it helps. Because let's be honest, back in the day, I can unlock a character because I worked my butt off to get it. Now these days, I gotta pay to get Freddy Krueger for Mortal Kombat. Unless I get Collector's Edition, but I gotta wait 6 months to get it. So, yeah, you can wait and wait for that price to drop at GameStop. Or you just basically say, you know what, I'm just gonna download it and it's just how it's gonna be. I found myself with that situation with Borderlands. I wanted to get Tina's mission so bad. I was willing to pay for it at one point. But then I said, oh wait, Game of the Year is already out, and it's $60 right now. But I guarantee there's probably going to be a price drop from GameStop eventually. Now it's down to $39. So I said, oh yeah, I'm going to get it, and that way it's even cheaper than if I would have got all the DLCs at the same time. Way cheaper.
Now, you mentioned you have kids. Is there anything that, you kind of like to, I guess, bring them up to in your world, or...
Well, I know my son is a big gamer like me. He's phenomenal. He's going to be one of those ones that if he goes professional, it's not far-fetched. He's that good. He's kicking people's butts on Smash Brothers. But at the same time, if he gets into design, that's cool. If he becomes a professional gamer, it's cool. But I would rather him focus on something that is, I don't know, science or something more that is just more feasible, we'll say. Because, gaming industry is important, but it becomes a hobby. That's all it ever becomes, is just a hobby. It's not something that, from a professional standpoint, that I could look back and say, I'm extremely happy with what I did in my career. But most of the time, I find myself going back and saying, I second-guessing myself. And that's from someone from the industry standpoint, that basically says a lot. It really does. And it goes both negative and positive. But, if you have something that you're continually contributing to society, like science, it's an ongoing thing and it will benefit people's lives. Unless gaming starts benefiting people's lives for miracle work or whatever the case might be, then yeah, I see that gaming could actually keep going in a direction we've never seen it. But neural technology like Carmack's been talking about, I just don't see it in the next 20 years. I just don't see it being practical.
Now, on that kind of note, do you know anything about, I can't remember which racing game it is, they set up their own driving school where they take the top players and they get trained. They just from their training with that, they give them a little bit of real world, then they actually started. Some of them have been winning races, like big races.
Well, gaming in general goes hand in hand with society. If you think about our drone pilots, are good gamers, ironically. So it is beneficial, but what point does it basically become game, and what time does it actually become something else? You got to basically differentiate between the two, because like what Carmack sees for the industry in the future is being able to neural tap into the brain to actually fundamentally be part of a game. That's pretty extreme. You're talking, this is way beyond Lawnmower Man. This is extreme. But imagine what you see neurally is like if you were actually on a physical battlefield. When you get shot, your neural senses feel like you've got shot. That's incredible. Imagine a game like that. That's unheard of. But imagine the negative effect to that too. What if it causes cardiac arrest? Is there something you're going to have to sign as a waiver before you play this game? So, the way the industry is going, I like that we're stepping into better graphics. I admit that graphics are always a good push. I want stories to make a bigger comeback. We need more Half-Life 2s. We need something that is just so evolving and so drastically different that we sit back and say, you know what? That was actually a unique play. Instead of going, well, geez, Thief feels like Assassin's Creed with a better engine. And we don't want to do that because we know what Thief was before. Thief was an amazing game. Everyone was hot about that game. It won awards. Everyone was talking about it. But now it's just another game on the market. And no one ever sees it from the standpoint that at one time it was brilliance. I mean, System Shock. Before BioShock even existed, System Shock set the standard for a hybrid video game. But no one ever saw it that way. But then when BioShock came out, it was like, oh my goodness, BioShock, it's changed everything. No, System Shock changed everything. It's just you didn't notice it. And it wasn't a big title because everyone was talking about Half-Life back then, which is understandable because that changed a lot of the industry.
Is there a specific game that's, coming out in the near future that you wish you could have worked on or you would like to? Destiny?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me, and I hate to say it because it feels awkward saying this, but EverQuest Next and EverQuest Landmark looks amazing because they're taking a concept of Minecraft and WoW and splicing them into one game. I mean, it's brilliance. It really is. I mean, it looks good. It sounds good. I mean, and everyone's talking about it. And think about it. When was the last time EverQuest was in the news? EverQuest 2? But that wasn't really news. That was like, oh, EverQuest 2's out, but hey, look, there's WoW, or there's EVE Online, It's like, it was just an afterthought, But, I mean, with EverQuest Landmark, it could change the way we look at MMOs. It really could. A sandbox that's by a major AAA studio, be interesting. It really would be.
How do you feel about user content? Take, for example, Skyrim.
I see pros and cons to it. I think that some studios are doing it right. Some studios are doing it wrong. The best example, once again, I go back to Sony. They have that developer kit for users. You can actually make items to put in game and sell in the actual bazaar. I mean, seriously? I can design something and put it in a game? That's phenomenal. Why can't more studios focus on the gamer and give the gamer what they really want instead of basically saying, okay, what we're going to do is we know you like Call of Duty because we see you buy it. It's obvious. Look at the numbers. But let's actually give them something more. But no one ever wants to push that envelope because then it basically it's going to a direction that no one wants to approach. It's actually giving the customer what they want and what they're paying for. I mean, when was the last time you saw a studio say, hey, you know what? How about we do something for the community? I know that Gearbox does this right now. They have this thing where, for Borderlands, they bring everyone together. They can check out the studio. But how many studios do that right now? Just to invite people to come by and say, hey, you want to check out our studio for a day? Not many people do it. I think the industry as a whole needs to wake up and see that gamers want more because they're paying for it. I mean, what's Titanfall going to come out at for the Xbox One? What's the price? Like $69?
Something like that.
What's collector's edition? A couple $100?
Something like that.
Yeah.
So you look at it from that standpoint, that's a lot of money for any gamer to fork out. I mean, imagine how much Borderlands 3, the actual collector with the Volt box was. I mean, that's like what? That was a $200 piece?
I've seen a few games for $200 with collector's editions coming out.
And is it justifiable? Well, some of the stuff you get is cool. I mean, I've seen some of the collector sets, and I'm even jealous of them. But at the same time, I look at them, I was like, I got Marvel vs. Capcom collectors. I was irritated. Because not only 6 months later, they had a new game out. And it had more characters. And I'm like, so why did I pay for collectors when I got 2 characters I barely use? What was the point? In a comic book with a fancy metal case? I mean, why did I pay for this? It didn't make sense to me.
I think the only one I've used is Grand Theft Auto 4, I think. 3? Doesn't matter. Yeah, they came out with a bag and like a metal locking case, and I still use both.
Can't beat that. Most of my collector sets collect dust downstairs.
So he kind of touched base on this earlier a little bit. What do you kind of feel about, the downloadable content, the updates? I mean, are you kind of more old school when it comes down to that, or do you think that all the updates and all that is beneficial?
Okay, yes and no, because we obviously saw when we went from the Xbox dashboard before Metro, everyone was happy with that dashboard. I mean, I didn't complain about it. Then the Metro thing came, and I'm like, wait, can I actually do with Kinect? Can I just do that? Is that possible? And then I realized I couldn't. And I'm like, well, why would you put Metro on this? This makes no sense. That's okay. So there's an example of a bad update. Some DLCs that I've seen are actually worth it. Honestly, there is a couple out there. But is it enough to justify the price they're asking? I mean, you go on the Xbox Live Marketplace and you look at some of the stuff. Like, you can get stuff for your actual character, but it's like $20. Like, really? That much? Dude, that's just unlogical. I mean, that's like charging someone for X and A. Why would you do that? It should be free. Oh wait, that's right, it is free. Well, it was. They probably pulled it off at this point. So realistically speaking, I would say it really depends what it is. Patches are critical because some games are just buggy, and we just obviously see that. The best example was Ultima 7, was it? It was the one, no, after Pagan. Whatever that one was. That was so bug-ridden that they actually realized how bad it was, and they actually put a patch disc with the game months later. Which, like, well, why didn't you just put it with it the first time around? Because when you walked in the first level, all of a sudden, wake up, Avatar, and you're like, that can't be part of the game, could it? You know, and it kind of ruins your perception of the game at that point. And that game was just buggy. I mean, anything you did in the game, it's just like, okay, you know what? I'm getting out of this. I can't play this. I don't even know why I bought this game because it's unplayable. Even with a good system, it's still unplayable.
How do you feel about the push towards motion-controlled games?
It's kind of how I feel about the Kinects. Kinects would have been better for business than it would have been for gamers. I hate to say it, but imagine a presentation. You're like, okay, so on my PowerPoint presentation, okay, this is what I'm doing. It makes a lot of sense in a business world. Now it doesn't. Now for Kinects, okay, you play some of the games, right? And you're like, you do this, and then all of a sudden, it's like motioning your leg. Like, what? Okay, this is supposed to be 720. This should be obviously seeing the difference between an arm and a leg, hopefully. And the fighting game was horrible. You're like trying to punch, and it's thinking like you're kicking. I mean, unless they find a way for motion capture to actually work in the game, I'd say just leave them alone, because we're just not there yet. If we're going to be there, that means the hardware has to be capable of handling that device. And even with the Xbox One, with the current, Kinect it has, I don't even think it's capable. I think it needs to be higher resolution camera, and it has to be at higher def to basically do full capturing. And I just don't think it's there yet. But in time, yeah, it could be a good idea, but not until it gets better.
Is there a motion-controlled system? Like, do you prefer, the Wii, Move, Kinect?
Out of all the ones I've seen, they all are catastrophic failures. I mean, the Wii, I gotta admit, it was a cool little gimmick at first. I was like, the whole little thing, it's so cool, It's like, it kind of reminded me of the peripherals for the Dreamcast. It's like, I don't know why I have this, I just do, because I think there's a fishing game I can fish with. So it was kind of cool at first, but then after a while, I was like, I got to the point where I just plugged the game controller back in. And I was like, hey, it works, because this whole battery's going out, and the thing sometimes you gotta put the sensor just right. I was like, nah, I can't do this anymore. I'm past this.
It is a lot to mess with.
Exactly. And then the iToy, let's not even go there, okay? The ice cream cone! This thing's so awesome! And you're just like, no, this is terrible. Who's designed this thing? A 2-year-old? And then obviously the Kinect, I gotta admit, there's a lot of things I thought that was cool about it, and it could have been more. But from a business standpoint, perfect. From a gaming standpoint, it's just terrible.
Have you thought of any ulterior form of controls that work with them? Like Dance Dance had the pads, and old Nintendo you had like the bazooka and the...
Everyone had a gimmick. I mean, you had the Power Glove. That's a good gimmick. You had Rob the Robot.
There's something powerful about the glove, though.
Well, the glove makes you feel empowered. You're just like, oh yeah, because I watched the movie, and I know that this Power Glove is going to give me the ability to knock Tyson out. Yeah, well, I have one too.
Yeah.
It doesn't work anymore, but
Mine doesn't either.
it's like it died years ago. Like a lot of my Nintendo stuff. But the peripheral thing, if you're gonna sell a peripheral idea, make sure it's feasible. I mean, that Sega fishing game, seriously, from the Dreamcast, I'm like, really? We're gonna go there. We're actually gonna go there. Why don't you make a skateboard without wheels? Oh wait, they already did that. It's called Tony Hawk. But the problem is that you're taking away from the fundamental purpose of why reality exists. Because I don't want to fish in a game. I'd rather go out and do it in real life. I don't want to skateboard in a video game because it's pointless. I mean, I'd rather go out and do the real thing. So if you're going to make a peripheral, make sure it's logical, and it's not something that's going to defeat the purpose of why you're playing the game in the first place. Because those guns they had for the Nerf, for the Wii, seriously, those things were so bad. It was worse than buying a Nerf low-end gun at Toys R Us. And the thing is, one shot, that's all it was good for. Pop it back, boom, you're done. So why even buy the peripheral? It's pointless, because even as a controller piece, it's not that good. So yeah, I mean, unless they fundamentally change the whole concept and make it logical, no, that's not going to happen.
It's time.
Oh.
You got it.
Well, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The lights must go off.